All set.
Thanks, Maria. Good afternoon, everyone. Today is June 16th, 2021, and this is a meeting of the Building and Finance Subcommittee of the Gloucester School Committee. I will remind everyone the mission for Gloucester Public Schools is for all students to be successful, engaged, lifelong learners. This meeting is being recorded by video and audio in accordance with state open meeting law, consistent with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and banning certain gatherings. We need a new wording on this, Jonathan, such that an in-person meeting of the school committee is not possible. This meeting will be conducted by remote participation. The public may not physically attend this meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time and participate when necessary. Okay. So the first order of business is this current fiscal year 21, budget review, general fund, COVID grants, and food service. So we'll talk about how we wrap up this year financially.
Okay. Before I begin, I just wanted to express my appreciation to a job well done by Cody Marshall. He kept track of all the typical transactions this year, as well as recording the many new grants and transactions in their proper grant accounts, and keeping, more importantly, a detailed audit trail to document those entries. I also want to mention that Cody Marshall has been selected as the new finance director. He was selected over a competitive field of candidates, and we look forward to exciting new technological capabilities that he brings to this position. He starts the new position on July 1st, and we will not be hiring his prior position. So it's not a net, there's no gain in people in the business office, just a upgrade, so to speak, in a position. So with that, let's turn our attention to the.
We can give our collective congratulations to Cody.
Okay.
Happy to have you take more responsibility.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Looking forward to it.
Congratulations, Cody.
Thanks, Jonathan.
I'd like to talk about the FY21 budget update. First of order, probably the most unique thing about FY21 was the grants. And with that, let's look at a table of COVID-19 related grants. And
I've got the webinar is being recorded in the middle of my screen.
Oh, you should be able to hit OK or.
Yeah,
can you
I
hit
can't.
continue?
it's not on my screen. I just can't see what you're showing, or I can't see all of it. It won't go away.
Jonathan, if you did it come up for you, and did you knock it away once, or?
No.
So
It's like if I was running the meeting or something, but I'm not.
Here's one possibility.
It's just me, huh?
It's just you, sorry.
Okay.
It showed up for me, but then I click on it and it goes away.
Yeah. It's like not on my screen. Maybe. I mean, nothing happens. I mean, nothing happens when I click on anything that's on the screen except the. Let me. I'll go away and come back. See if that works. No. No, it's not. That's not. Oh, it's gone.
Nicely done, Jonathan.
I don't know what I did.
Hey, when in doubt, reboot. Yeah.
Yeah, do you want to sign out of the meeting and sign back in?
No, it's gone. I'm all set.
Oh,
Okay.
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 So, ready for me to continue then?
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, you bet. So the most unique, as I was saying, the most unique thing about FY21 was the grants. And collectively, there were for 6 different grants. And they totaled $3.5 million. So we had the ESSER one at 471,000 and COVID related, the CVRF, the opening grant of 695,000. Those we knew about, but what we didn't know early on was that the municipal grant was going to contribute $519,000 towards our remote salaries. So that was a pleasant surprise. In addition, the CPF award, which is the Coronavirus Prevention Fund, that was announced in January. And then in February, the ESSER 2 grant was posted. So things started looking a lot better in December. And like to entertain any questions about the grants, which really helped pay for all the remote salaries, and the remote salaries were at least 1.9 million. So early on in the fiscal year, it was concerning, but the light started to shine towards December, and things started to fall into place at that time. So let's move on to
Could I just-
yeah,
Just
go
ask a
ahead.
quick question. So have all of these funds been either spent or encumbered?
Yes, the ESSER one has been fully, there's just maybe 10,000 left on it. CVRF is very close, 693,000. So we have the last payroll, and then we're going to be able to do a journal from our remote academy salaries to fully complete and fully exhaust ESSER 1 and CVRF, which the deadline is, they'd like us to spend it out June 30th of 2021.
Those are both originally December 30th, 2020, which is some of the reasons we had sort of limited in the beginning that opened up. But ESSER 2 is not expended. There's a million. How much? So ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 really will help us over the next through FY24.
And the CPF, Coronavirus Prevention Fund, will be fully paid out by the end of June as well. Remote tech was fully paid off. So yeah, ESSER 2, and as Ben said, ESSER 2, the allocation is 1.9 million. So that's over several years to spend that, as well as ESSER 3 will be all the way through to 2024. So we have 2 and 3 yet to be yet to talk about and discuss how we're going to spend those dollars. But let's move on to the next item, which is budget year to date, and let's really look at how we did this year. And if you go towards the bottom of the page, Cody, if you can go cursor all the way down, we're going to start at the bottom and work our way up, so we can see the bottom line. And there it is. So what is interesting is that at the end of the year, we're showing that we're spending, that we have available just over $2 million. Now, That $2 million is spoken for, and I'm going to lay out for you how we're going to spend that $2 million yet to be spent. First of all, the health insurance, $524,000 is the last month's payment. And so that will bring it way down. As well as what Cody does at the end of the year is he accrues back for those, the July payment that was worked in June. He's going to accrue those dollars and post it to June. That's $195,000. We have some liabilities, $50,000 that we contribute to align the liabilities with the actual outstanding bill. And then payroll hourly, about $100,000 on our last payroll is for a retro for 2 different unions, hourly workers, bus drivers, food service salaries, substitutes, tutors. And then we have, at the end of that, we have $1,250,000, and that's for our prepaid tuition. And then lastly, we're going to have $117,000 left, and that will be contributed back to the city's free cash. When you look at $1,250,000, that represents 2.8% of the total budget. So on a much smaller scale, if you had $100, 2.8% is $2.80. So that brings it down to something that we all can relate to. And as well as the 117,000 off of the $44 million total general fund budget, that's 0.26%, or on $100, that's 26 cents. So all in all, this year, we did such a good job managing the budget with, as you saw, $3.5 million of additional spending due to the pandemic. We were able to capture $3.5 million of new grants to pay for it. And then being able to come under budget and provide the supplies and services on time for the students and staff to work in a hybrid schedule and have all the supplies and services they need to make it work. So bottom line, it worked out in an extremely challenging fiscal year. Now, at this point, let's get to some of the details. And now we're going to work our way up, or start from the beginning and work our way back down. So in the beginning, the professional salaries budget is the largest budget that we have, and that represents $24.6 million. Of that $24.6 million, we came in about $10,000 within budget after the various transfers we made. So that worked out extremely well. If you look at now the red circles, the red circles show that food service and the food service, we needed additional $240,000 to fund the food service operations. We'll get more into, talk more about the food service when we look at the food service report. So that's going to be further down the agenda, but the general fund did contribute $240,000. Now let's move down the list and look at other salaries. Here's some other salaries. We're under budget by close to $50,000. And that represented, we had some savings. We had district-wide professional development stipends that were paid by one of the COVID-19 related grants. And then we had a voc ed paraprofessional that moved up into a teacher's rank, and we did not refill that voc ed para position. So that provided the
Gary,
balance.
Can I
Sure.
ask about that particular
Sure.
position? Why did we not get a paraprofessional?
That was part of a grant that we received for 50,000.
Right,
Yeah.
but the grant was to fund the teacher, not to.
Right. So
not
that funded the
to-
teacher.
Right, it was
it-
an incremental position. It wasn't a swap of a position.
Yeah, right, exactly. It moved up to the paraprofessional, moved up to the teacher. And apparently I don't know if that was planned to be replaced. Do you know if that was planned?
My assumption was, Ben,
Oh, go ahead, Kathy, then I'll add if I need to.
my assumption was that regardless of who it was an incremental teacher being added to the program.
Right.
So my understanding, and this may be the case here as well, is in a variety of places, we filled teachers with paraprofessionals. They stepped up into that role, and then we had trouble backfilling the role they vacated. That happened, and I think this is another example of that. That happened in a variety of places.
So we still have that in the budget for the fall.
Gary, do you know that for sure? I don't know if
Yeah.
Excellent.
Cody is nodding, and
Yes.
he said we do.
Great.
We'll show you when we get to the paras positions. We'll show you what Ben is talking about, that there were a number of unfilled positions.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. So let's move on to the L positions. There was a lot of movement back and forth. Some of the L's teachers, one resigned, two others, I think, moved up into regular teaching positions, and then they were refilled. These positions were refilled with new teachers lower on the salary schedule. So there was a savings due to that. Moving down the line, this is the area that we're talking about that had, this is mainly the paraprofessionals, and we had a number of unfilled positions resulting in a sizable under budget in this position, in this grouping. And we still, the last payroll, we have a retro to pay for our paraprofessionals due to the recent settlement on that collective bargaining agreement. But here, this is an example of what Ben was talking about, where we have a number of unfilled positions. Moving on down the line, school tutors.
Gary, we can't hear you. Uh-oh. I can't hear you.
I can hear.
No, I can't hear him.
He's frozen.
School tutors, $40,000, $612.50.
He just. I'm gonna walk over and see how Gary's doing.
Well, it'd be scary if he's just frozen there in his seat and not moving.
Yeah.
Yeah, that vocational para actually hasn't been filled since the middle of FY20. That's when the para originally moved to the teaching position. Then we got that WA Auto Group grant for 3 years. So I think this coming year is the last one for it. But yeah, they haven't filled it, and it wasn't related to COVID. I don't know if they just never found somebody. I'm not sure why.
Hmm.
But it was budgeted for in FY21 as well.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
He's getting back on. Apparently the Wi-Fi thinks school's out. But
It is.
it's also true.
But we're not.
He's just, as he said before, I think he's rebooting or rejoining. Let's see here. Might be able to pick up the. So I can pick up some of this. The tutors, this is the common refrain on these is, people moved into other positions. In this case, it was I think inability to hire folks. We had a challenge across many different job functions about just people not wanting to come into the buildings, essentially. In some ways, we were hampered by doing more than other people. If we probably could have hired more remote people, but we didn't necessarily need them. So the tutors are an example of that. Going down further, substitute teachers, you've heard the story all year long. We actually did get more subs once COVID eased up. There were some subs here. I just know from personal experience watching the preschool, we were able to get some more subs, a couple more subs towards the end of the year, who were at this point more comfortable to come back in. Bus monitors there, 55,000 is the same story. Again, as you know, as we've described numerous times, just difficulty hiring enough bus monitors. We hope that'll change. We're not sure if it will, but we're going to make every effort. Gary, you're back. Can you hear us, Gary? Oh, Gary's not. Oh, he was, right? Didn't I see him? Okay.
Can everyone hear me now?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. I had my screen kicked out. So last night.
So Gary, we're down to page. Oh, you
I'm on
can
page 8.
you can see it's right on the screen. Sorry.
Yeah.
And Gary, what I was describing, I was explaining just in sort of more generally that a lot of these categories, subs, paras, this substitute paras at this point, have to do just with our inability to hire folks because of folks hesitant to come in. And then paras, another piece of the paras, as we described, was not backfilling positions.
Right.
So paras moved up, we didn't backfill. That lack of having to backfill a variety of positions actually helped us quite a bit. We thought early on at one point, it'd have to be sort of, every position that went remote would have to be fully backfilled. And we were able to sort of we didn't have to do in some cases. Principals wisely said, no, it's okay. I can get by with this year without that person because of the schedule they were running or the number of students who were in the classrooms. And then also in some cases it had difficulty hiring as well. So, and so Gary, if that's the case for other ones, just let us know and we can move through them more quickly. But that may not be the case for the ones that are upcoming.
Okay, so thank you, Ben.
Yep.
Thanks for pitch hitting. As we move down, Cody, if you move down, great. Repair and maintenance, we have cut off the purchase orders. So now in the ordinary expenses, we know that we're going to pretty much have available what is left in the budgets as you see in this report. So pretty confident now that any remaining dollars can be transferred out and put to other uses such as prepaid tuition. So why don't you cursor down here? This is the red circle here is just out of district transportation due to COVID-19 protocols. We had to hire additional buses and drivers. Those are outsourced, as well as because of additional foster students and we had additional out of district placements with requiring medical services that contributed to needing to support an additional almost 300,000, as well as special ed services down here at the other red circle. That was 161,000 for speech therapy and behavioral contracted services, as well as there's one more contracted service. So the three together add up to 100 additional 161,000. We also had under budget special out of district placements, and that came out to close to $300,000. So the net result of all that, those the two circles that I talked about, the additional costs for the out of district placements, transportation, as well as the contracted services, special ed, and then the out of district placements tuition for additional for students, that netted out to an additional $155,000 that we had to come up with. Okay, let's cursor down. Again, this is some unspent supply budget, $67,000. And we'll see one more circle, another 67. Okay, I think that's it for the detail. Look at the budget. All in all, we end the day with ability to provide $1,250,000 for prepaid tuition. And that's very similar to last year at this time. So before we move on to the FY22 budget, I'd like to pause here and see if there's any questions that I may be able to answer.
I'm just curious about the money that we will have to expend to pay teachers extra for moving to St. Anne's. Does that come out of this year's budget or next year's?
That'll be out of next year's budget.
Okay, but it'll be performed during the summer, correct?
Right.
Mm.
So the actual payment, we've ended our pays
Yeah,
for this fiscal year, depending on the exact date of when the moves occur or
Yeah.
when those teachers are working, we may accrue it back to June, or it will come, if it's done in July, then we'll pay it out of next year. So it all depends on exactly when they're scheduled to do that.
okay. I was just curious.
Yeah.
So Gary, you should plan, they'll be doing that this week and next week. So you should plan to accrue it back to June.
Yeah, we'll accrue that back then, definitely, back to June. So the extra dollars there then will reduce the remainder to the city by that difference. And I believe we still have some, we're still going to have some costs that can be reimbursed by the municipal CVRF grant. And that will then provide additional money that will end up going back to the city. Any other questions that I may answer? Okay, let's move on to budget changes. Just 2A. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's look at food service, 1F. So the food service, this is pretty much close to the end of the year, so we pretty much know what the results will be. One of the most significant items this year was that the lunches were free, and so there was no a la carte sales. And so typically à la carte sales were generating for the school district $374,000. We did get a few dollars in, and those were probably from previous year payment from the previous year. So that created a challenge for us, and that's why we needed to have the general fund support the food service program close to, as I said, it was above the 200, close to 250,000. Let's move down a little bit. Okay, a little bit further. Okay, so there's really three things I want to share, want to talk with you about. The end result, grand total is $54,000 in a negative position. Salaries paid by the general fund were actually $284,000. And the accrued revenue is $72,595. That is for May. June will be forthcoming soon as well. That's not announced yet. We're just finishing up June. So we're going to add the dollars back into, as you see in the big oval, we're going to add year-to-date minus 54,000. We're going to accrue, add plus 72,000, subtract the 284,000 of salaries paid by the general fund. So the end of the year, we're projecting a deficit of about 266,000. It's really not a deficit because, as you know, this general fund supported or made the payment. But if you just look at the results, it was about $266,000 shortfall. And that's attributable to not being able to sell the a la carte sales, food service sales. Now, for next year, it's again free, but the difference is this year, the schedules for the middle school and the high school didn't lend themselves for the students to grab lunches. So we were not able to sell as many, not sell, but record and get credit from the federal government for as many food lunch sales as, or lunch meals as what normally would have happened with a regular schedule. Going to a new regular schedule for next year, we're hoping it's not going to repeat itself as it did this year. The elementaries were pretty, did real nice.
Just to add, just to give an example of that, when we return to the regular school day, Plum Cove, for example, there are very few breakfast, historically, there have been very few breakfasts served at Plum Cove. And there obviously were very few, not very many taken home. You know, they'd be taken home the prior afternoon at our elementaries this year while we were in hybrid. Once we went back into the regular school day, the daily breakfasts at Plum Cove increased from like single digits the first week or so to upwards of a few dozen every day, and even more, I think, on some days. I actually went and had one of their fantastic breakfast sandwiches one morning. That was very good, actually. That's another matter. Anyway, the point I'm making is that with with in-person next year and much higher use of the breakfast and lunches because it'll be free to everybody again. That will allow us to earn back more revenue from the federal government. In addition, they are raising the rates of reimbursement, I believe, and also where we get the highest reimbursement, which is high school. Essentially, there are very few meals served this year, so that will come back full force as well. So as Gary was explaining, with more meals being served, our revenue will be higher, both on a per meal basis, but also total basis as well. I think Joel has a question.
Go ahead, Joel.
Thanks. In years past, are we ever in the black, or are we just always usually closer to the black?
We're much closer.
But never actually in the black, right? Where we always lose a little bit of money, which again, I don't have a problem with, but we always lose a little bit of money to feed these kids, correct?
Yeah, and we have budgeted this way for next year. We typically budget $100,000 for the food service director's position as part of the general fund budget. And we typically, after doing that, have been able to balance the food service account, revolving account. So yeah, it's not as bad as what we experienced this year with the loss of revenue from the a la carte sales.
Right. Well, I guess, kind of what my thinking here is, how we look at this stuff. And so, this is useful information. There's there's this focus, like, Gary, your narrative, like, oh, hopefully next year, we'll do a little better. And, I'd be curious as a district or as a committee, while we don't want to be, wasting money, I think, like, I'm more interested in making sure that students are, like, not wasting food and are actually eating and enjoying it. Like, I'm less worried about making sure that these children are buying food to help us with the bottom line. I'm more concerned or more interested to find out from the food service department as to whether or not students are actually ingesting this food and whether it's, giving them what they need to be productive students, and so I'd just be curious going forward how we, maybe outside of BNF, but how we as a committee kind of really get an understanding on what's going on besides just the monetary transaction.
So Joel, can I respond to that? Is that okay?
Mhm.
Yeah. So Joel, I think what you're getting at is, is the food tasty? Are there good offerings? Are kids choosing it? Are they not wasting it? Like that? That's is it health? Are there healthy options? Is that sort of what you're getting at, more quality and
Yeah, again, and I'm not saying it is. I'd be more curious. It's a cool piece of information. How many children are purchasing lunch and what it does as far as the budgetary impact. But I'd be interested to know more so what this experience is. I'm not saying that there needs to be any changes to what's being served necessarily, but how it's being served and how it's being offered. Because again, it's one of those things where, I'm more curious whether people are actually having the time they need to eat the lunch and whether they're actually eating the lunch. So you can certainly hear some cafeteria workers tell horror stories about, certain kids who get a tray full of food and take, 3 bites from a couple of things, and then 80% of the food ending up in the trash. And so that's like, another way to save money is to avoid food unnecessarily being in the trash, because students being served, food in a manner that they're not going to eat, so that's just another kind of way to think about it.
Yep. Got it.
That's a great point. We want to make sure that there's no waste. Kids that take the meal actually want the meal. So I think in the fall, we generally have Martha Joe come and meet with the BNF committee and talk about those issues in terms of the quality of the food, the offerings, and the fact that that kids are, what are kids doing? Are kids eating the meal? Is there waste? And all those kinds of questions, and how to motivate the students to be mindful and not waste.
Right. I appreciate there's obviously overlap in regulations. Like, for instance, I'm sure that they're required to provide certain nutritional components to a food. And so if green beans are satisfying or checking that box today, and I, the 4th grader, don't like green beans, I can't get it without green beans, because then we're in violation of another regulation by serving a green bean-less tray, even though unfortunately those green beans, if it's on my 4th grade tray, are going right into the trash. So I'm just, I don't have the answer or know exactly how to navigate it, but I'm just curious to kind of figure out, we talk about just getting kids to buy more meals. That might not be the answer. The answer might be to, target the way in which they're eating in a more efficient way
Right,
for another day.
right. We're definitely not coaching the students to take the meals. But I think the point that Ben and I were trying to make was that the schedules at the junior high, at the middle school, not the junior high, middle school and the high school this year didn't lend themselves to kids being able to take the meal because the timing wasn't convenient. There are 2 sessions at the high school, and both times either were too early when they ended the day or too late on the later session. The middle school, there wasn't time to go to the cafeteria and take the meal. So there were, because of the hybrid schedule, there was some issues there. But your point, Joel, is well taken, that we want to be able to market the food, but do it in a way that is in sync with what the students want, and not definitely not have waste.
And I do think that analysis is, going to be good to get an update on, because I know a lot of people who have, growing kids in high school, their kids can't get enough food. And given the federal requirements, they can't really go buy 1-2 lunches. They can't really get 2 entrees on a tray and then, the same amount of everything else. So just be interesting to understand some of these dynamics as to, we want to put the healthy food on the tray. So I'm not saying that elementary kids shouldn't have certain things presented to them, but I do think maybe at high school, we might find something to advocate for, right?
Right.
And, I realize it's, probably an advocating at the federal level, since a lot of those requirements come that way. But, how do we just make sure our food service is, as Joel said, tasty, appetizing, and really serving the kids' needs, based upon how hungry they are and all that. So my question has a little bit to do with the projection that we may break even next year. And that is because, so the meal cost, the food cost, would be correlated to the number of meals, right? And so some portion of the reimbursement is correlated to the number of meals. But this year, the number of meals didn't then also cover what I would say is somewhat of our fixed costs of salaries, right? Salaries and the packaging, right? We had more supply costs. So there were things that really were hard to cover anyway, because the cost went up and you needed the staff to basically serve the meals the way we did serve the meals.
Right. The labor was just as intensive as if we sold more meals.
Yeah.
So we had those fixed costs that couldn't recoup through additional meal counts.
Okay.
And then there was additional paper cost from the additional packaging for the to-go containers at the middle school.
Okay. All right. Good.
David,
Okay.
Can I add something?
Yeah, please.
So to that deficit number, I would say something that also isn't factored in is the carryover from the previous fiscal year, which was around $53,000. So more like 215 of a deficit for what it's worth. Just thought I'd throw it out there.
Thank you.
And then under revolving funds, we'll revisit the balance in the revolving account when we get to that later in the agenda. So let's move on. With that said, let's move on to FY22. So there was good news last night at the City Hall. They passed the budget, is what I'm told from Ben. And they passed the total budget, which is the if you cursor down, all the way down, it's $45 million. That was passed in total. And that was that's what we presented at the public hearing. And that's what we presented all the way through this budget process. The versions that we had that just changed the the numbers between different departments. So let's go to the top. I think the changes represent 3 categories: new hires and retirement, resignations, collective bargaining agreements and individual contracts, and lastly, the prepaid tuition. So let's go to the first circle item, and that is the transportation. We hired a part-time mechanic, 19 and a half hours. We want to try that. We think we found someone with excellent experience, has retired from another school district in that same job. And we think with his experience and knowledge, we'll be able to do the job in less hours, save money, and this works out for the part-time person that we've interviewed. So we see a projected savings of $29,000. We plugged it into the budget. At GHS, the next circled item, some additional retirements, resignations. So in the retirement situations, you heard me say both before, person retiring, earning a top salary or towards the top, 80 to 90,000 is replaced with a new hire with less experience and towards the lower end of the salary schedule. In this case, with several different retirements, resignations, we've got about 55,800 that we've identified. Moving on to the next circle item at O'Malley, the curriculum instruction coordinator. First, we were looking to hire or considering hiring within the district, which would have created eventually an opening at the typical new hire average visit cost of $61,767. However, the job became retooled, and we've hired from outside at $108,000. So there's the difference from what we've had in version 2 to the actual placement. Let's move on down.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I think this is the first that we're seeing that literacy coach is now a different, bigger position. No?
No,
No, we've talked about it at version 2.
Okay.
We've talked about it being a curriculum and instruction coordinator. The difference from now is that it was a more of an internal candidate.
Yeah, I get it. It's the dollars right now.
Yeah,
I guess I then want to go back to
sure.
the rationale for a literacy coach, which to me seems a little more hands-on or closer to the student work as opposed to what the position has evolved to. So
here's the very, sorry, Kathy, let me finish the question. I'm being overly enthusiastic. Sorry.
go ahead. If you have good news, go for it.
Yeah, so this is one of the benefits of having the federal dollars. We'll be able to do both and.
That's
yeah.
what I was hoping.
Yeah, in fact, I'll show you in a little bit some of the, our continued work on ESSER 2, and we'll actually be doing a math and literacy interventions at O'Malley because of that.
Okay.
Yeah, this position specifically, we did show it to you.
Yeah.
I can't remember if we showed it to you in the April meeting, but definitely showed it after that, and also showed it to city council as well during my presentation. The woman who we hired is Maura Donahue, and she's has been a principal for a number of years, a middle school principal, and really, really pleased to have her because of her expertise, but also, you know, one of the main reasons she's moving on from being a principal is because she really wants to focus on the curriculum instructional work of the principal. And if you're principal, you can't just do that. You do much more than that. So anyway, you'll learn more about Maura, but I think it's a big win for us, and somebody that Lynn and Greg Bach are both very, very excited to work with.
I'm delighted. I'm kind of wish we might have put forth another one at the high school level to help James with some of the important work that's going on there. But this is great to see. I think it's a much needed position. I think it's been needed for a while to have that additional capacity at a higher level to kind of look at some of those things, because our principals are really doing so many things.
Great, thank you.
Could I just ask where we're at in our hiring process? So have we filled up half of the open positions, or a third, or?
That is a good question. I don't know the numbers exactly, Jonathan. It is happening fast and furiously. There are comings and goings, obviously, and we learn of some new ones, I won't say day by day, but week by week. I just don't know exactly what the percentage is, but I can give folks an update at next week's school committee meeting.
Okay, great.
That brings us down to the last circled item. And let's walk through that. So there's a few intricacies here that let's take our time on this one. The out-of-district tuition placeholders, we need to have that in the budget because throughout the year, we have additional students coming into our schools that are needing additional services that we can't provide or don't have the ability to provide at this juncture. So we have in the budget as a placeholder, in this case, $700,000. And, additionally, when we place a kid outside of the district, not only does it cost out of district tuition expense, but it also creates additional transportation costs. So we may move some dollars here into another line item, or we may move some of these dollars if we need additional contracted services for speech therapy, as an example. So also in this line item, we have under special education paraprofessionals. As you know, the contract was settled. We had a retro that we paid, and new positions. We've hired new positions because of additional student needs for one-on-one. We had some replacements of retiring or paraprofessionals that resigned, and then obviously the contract settlement. So all in all, that went up $132,000 more than what we had budgeted in version 2. Prepaid tuition here, last time I reported in May that the number was going to look like $1 million. Version 2 was created in April. Last report was $1 million. Now we're looking at $1,250,000, and that will be the last. That will be the purchase order. The final purchase order amount would be $1,250,000. teachers, vacancies, lane changes. That's plus and minus here. There's a savings of 4,825 for a total decrease of 41,000 in this special education department. So those are the significant changes that we've wanted to share with you. Again, the bottom line from version 1, version 2, version 3, they've all been at 45.6 million. It's just money has been moved around different departments depending upon as we get closer to finalizing the budget and more information is known, we can update the departmental budgets. Let me stop there. And let me answer any questions that you have between myself, Ben, or Cody. We'd be happy to entertain any questions.
I don't see any questions.
Okay.
All set.
You guys have done a great job keeping us updated on things.
Okay. Thank you.
So now we need a motion to approve the final budget for fiscal year 2022.
Yes.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we recommend to the full committee that they approve the 2022 budget in the amount of $45,638.80 and $897. And I so move.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Just like to thank, it's been a good process this year, and we've been, the recognition that it's always in flux, and it will be in flux even after we pass it to some extent, is always been known, but we've been well informed of those changes by this administration. So I'd like to thank them.
Yeah, it's been great. Okay, Maria, roll call vote.
Joel,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
and Kathy.
Yes. Okay, passes
Okay.
3-0.
Gary, could I just pull in here, push in here on 2D? I've added just a budget planning on ESSER 2.
Yes.
Subcommittee, just an update on where we are on some of this work.
Yeah, please.
Great. Cody, thank you. So let me also pull it up here so I can see it. We've been working over the last couple of weeks, a variety of folks, sort of coming together in different groupings. So one of the earlier ones was Patty Wegman working with adjustment counselors across the district and social worker psychologists to understand what they were thinking about in terms of support for funding. The funding on ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 are in some broad categories. This isn't all of them here, but I'll just go over them. So first of all, supporting social, emotional, mental health is a big priority in ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. Learning loss, for folks who had interrupted learning or because of the pandemic or because of less time, we obviously are doing better than most on that, but still want to make sure we do pay very close attention to students who are not doing as well as they could have been, and that's kids from across the spectrum, such as special education and other typically students who struggle more in school or who are typically need additional support, I should say. That includes the English learners as well, which we'll continue to work on with those. Supplies, materials, technology, and then capital furniture maintenance as well. So these are the broad categories. I'm just focusing on ESSER 2 work we've been doing. So backing up a little bit, as I was describing some of the work Patty Wegman has been doing. Also been talking to principals, especially middle school and high school. Large buildings, large student bodies, complex student bodies, and what can we do specifically in those areas. So in terms of supporting social emotional health, you'll see we're working to stand up and have ESSER 2 fund adjustment counselors at Beaman and O'Malley, a clinician and counselor at GHS, a board certified behavior analyst for PK through 12, guidance counselors at summer school in ESY we've talked about before. That will be a combination of, this year funding from the city, next year funding from ESSER 2. Also, we're going to be doing more staff development and parent forums on student anxiety. Last night, there was a great forum led by Lynn Lyons. That was really one of the next steps in that, and we're working with her with both parents and staff next year. Also, at the middle school, looking to hire a PACE program teacher. PACE is really, it's a program like we have had at the high school. It's for students with challenging behaviors and how to help have them reintegrate and sort of really, connect and become a closer part of the school and support them in getting past negative behaviors that get in the way of their learning. So those are some of the ways that we're going to be using ESSER dollars to support social, emotional, mental health. And the things we're working out now is, is just ESSER 2 funding for 1 or 2 years? Does ESSER 3 pick it up? Let me continue on a little bit. So you see the next category is really about, focusing on learning loss, so interventionists and tutoring. We've mentioned some of those before at elementary. These will also be at O'Malley now as well. I mentioned before, we were going to be doing a literacy interventionist. Now we'll be able to do a literacy and a math interventionist. At the same time, we are looking longer term at how to make sure those aren't just add-on positions, but they're integrated into the daily life of the houses, the tier 1 instruction, that sort of thing. We'll also allow this. We have a K-5 ELA review like we have done with the math recently, as you know about, and ESSER 2 can support that work, which will be, as you've seen before, collaborative, many teachers working together and identifying what the next level is for our curriculum in English language arts. Special education teachers. So ESY is, so supporting our summer programs and special education and making sure those are more robust. Special education teachers, we're looking specifically where they can where it might be make sense to add them on a short-term basis, especially to support specific areas, specific programs, that sort of thing. Another thing we're still looking into, and we're having another meeting about this tomorrow, is just additional capacity for leadership in special education at the high school. And that can happen or needs to happen on a variety of levels. One of them is just more capacity to work with special education teachers and classroom teachers on supporting special education students, working on their instruction to support special education students better. So we haven't been able to, because of our staffing at the high school and the pretty significant caseloads there, especially for a program leader, haven't been able to really focus on how do you strengthen instruction for special education students and having our folks lead that work. We're looking closely and considering a few options on how to get more capacity in the leadership role at the high school, in special education specifically, to help sort of ramp up that work, which sort of gets pushed aside by caseloads and IEP meetings and the sort of the nuts and bolts of special education. So Chromebooks will, as I mentioned before, we are now going, we are continuing on a one-to-one Chromebooks, approach. And that means we do need to add Chromebooks for third graders, rising third graders. And we'll be able to do that with these grants going for the next few years. And then some things we've already been doing, contract cleaning. We will continue that at the preschool because there's no daytime custodian here and has never been. And then also, about the floor covering at the high school, ESSER 2 is paid for that for this year. So what I want to say about these, this work is what's really, there are two things that I think everyone needs to think about or needs to realize with this funding is one, these are high priority areas that we can't just ask our own folks to do more of, okay? We can't ask our BCBA to be in more places across the district. And we can't ask, it wouldn't be effective to our students to have adjustment counselors take on more students, okay? We're pretty confident more students will have a need for support in a variety of ways, but just having the current people we have do more isn't really a good strategy. The other piece of this is we're gonna have to be really, really thoughtful and strategic over the next few years about which of these positions we want to keep long-term and make sure, whether it's FY23 or FY24, that we start transitioning the ones we want to continue onto the operating budget. So that'll take some work, and you'll see how they go in terms of what's making a good impact and how our needs may change over the next couple of years. But those two pieces, do need some more staff if we're going to supply some more support and better learning. And then also, these are short-term positions, and how do we absorb some of them, probably not all of them, into the operating budget. Any questions on that work? Any clarifications on how we're trying to approach this? Okay. Thank you.
Nope.
Thank you, Cody.
Okay, the next agenda item is the modular units. Here, let me just give you just a little background. We know, as you know, the modulars are in their, so to speak, last legs at Beeman and Plum Cove. We were told that information essentially by Mike Hale, and it's backed up with work orders that we've had leaky roofs. Doesn't make sense to repair them. It makes sense to replace them. We talked to John Dunn, and John Dunn has the financing vehicle to pay for this. So essentially what we want to do with this, as you know, we've been talking about this, we just want to move it off the dime, so to speak, and ask the B&F committee to approve a motion that's in your packet. And essentially the motion says, we want to ask or request for next year. So it's just a request, essentially, that summer of FY22, that the motions be set so that we can have a replacement of both modular units at Plum Cove and Beeman for next summer. And the three steps to this motion are: approve the cost to develop design specifications for replacement of the modular units with similar, so it's not expanding, it's almost the same design, just a replacement. 2, approve the cost and installation of replacing the units. And 3, approve the loan order. We believe these 3 steps are necessary to enact, to make it happen, that the units get replaced. So I'll stop there and entertain questions.
Oh, go ahead.
When we last talked about this, I had asked to look into whether this expense could be avoided if we had an opportunity to just stay in St. Anne's after the veterans population move out and relocate, Beaver and Plum Cove students into that location, which obviously that building, seems to do fine. We use it every time we need space. Has that been looked into at all?
Sorry, Joel, it has not been. We that slipped from my radar, and we have not been able to look into that.
So my understanding is that these loan orders are 20-year loan orders, and these modulars last 10 to 12 years. So we're going to pay for the ones we have now for 5+ years after we get rid of them. And and then we'll pay for the new ones again for another 5+ years after. And that just, to me, seems irresponsible, especially where we've known since 2008 that these things were going to expire in 2020. So I'm really not comfortable until we really explore all possible alternatives with throwing good money after bad with another round of these modulars. That's me.
I just want to remind everyone that the MSBA process for rebuilding a school is a long process, and we're not opening the new combined school until the fall of 23, at which time we can submit another statement of interest with the MSBA, but that's 2 years off. And then the process with MSBA, you can't guarantee you're going to get into the pipeline in your first year. So the timing of a potential new school would be probably closer to 10 to 12 years, not 6 years. And in terms of the educational advantage or disadvantage, I think, we'll need to hear from the superintendent on that. I mean, it's one thing to look at it from a pure financial perspective. It's another to totally change up the district for children for their entire elementary experience for, and just throw everything up in the air and have kids here, there, and everywhere, and have them have an additional transition from another school. So I'll go back to just the timing alone in terms of the importance of getting this in process with the city council, because the timing will be such that if Mike Hill says now is the time, it has to happen. I believe him because he's been saying it for a very long time. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Where did this, who developed this motion? Was it developed by John Dunn and Mike Hale, or where did it come from?
Yeah, so
I can-
so Gary developed it, and then I passed it along to John, Kenny Costa, and Mike Hale.
To some extent, I'm on board with Joel saying that we should look at all the options rather than just go with replacing what we've got with what we've got and continuing doing it. And it would seem to me there would be a step in between, asking for new modulars and to just replace what we have, and perhaps doing some sort of projection of need as far as students and population goes. We are transporting kids from, the riverside of Washington Street, out to Plum Cove, and inside of 128. And it just seems to me there should be something. There should be a little bit more thought to what we're doing. That being said, it is the school committee's responsibility to ask the city for adequate housing for the students. I think we should make a motion. I'm just not sure that this is the motion we should make. So I'm open for discussion a little bit further on this, because right now we will have, with the new school, we'll have more capacity than we have in the two existing schools, in my opinion. There's going to be 6 times 4, 24 classrooms in that building. And if you put 20 kids in a classroom, that's 480, not 440. There is some extra capacity. I would like to see us, look at this a little closer before we just say, let's do the same thing again.
Joel, go ahead.
There we go. Yeah, in addition to, the glowing reports we get, from everybody about using SANS, there's also a lot of, reports that came out positively about when there was West Parish 5th grade over at O'Malley. And again, as I'm happy to point out frequently, there's a third fewer students at O'Malley than there were 20 years ago. There's almost more than can't think how many fewer students there are at the high school, but there is a potential, there's room in these buildings for students. And, this doesn't need to be a short-term, knee-jerk reaction kind of thing. We have time to figure out how to do this in an appropriate way. And if at the end of the day, we've really backed ourselves into a corner where there is no solution, then I'm happy to look at it again. But right now we have these huge buildings with tons of extra capacity. We have an extra building we're renting that everybody says is like the best place ever. West Parish loved being there. Bets is so lucky to go there. Like, it's hard for me to just say, okay, let's replace all the modulars. There may be a hybrid, right? We say, hey, listen, you know what? There's how many are at Plum Cove? 6?
6.
So maybe say, you know what? We can get Plum Cove down to just 2 new ones, and that'll buy us another decade. And Beaman, we need a different number, right? Even if we can do something along those lines, because there's movement in the district, that's important. We are here to provide the best educational experience we can for our students, but we still have to answer to the city and be fiscally prudent in making sure that we're not needlessly spending money that could be spent funding salaries and other things like that. Because as we all know, every time the school budget is brought up, despite the fact that maintenance and repairs at the DPW, and despite the fact that building West Parish was on the general fund, City Hall is quick to remind us that, well, we're busy paying for your new school, so we can't give you X, Y, and Z. And so if they're going to be quote unquote busy paying for our new modulars and can give us X, Y, and Z, we may have put ourselves in a worse position trying to do the right thing.
So it sounds like we need to gather some of the financial information that we already have for any work at O'Malley. Someone could probably grab that number as we explored it as a preschool, just to understand a retrofit of any of the space at O'Malley.
Why retrofit? We didn't retrofit for 5th grade at West Parish. We just put it in their classrooms, right? That's a school.
I would like to see a motion that basically states that the modulars at Beaman and Plum Cove are at the end of their life, and that we need to build in capacity to house our students, and we would like to have some money appropriated to come up with the best answer. In other words, approve a cost design specification for not necessarily replacing the modular units, but to replace their use.
Oh, I see.
Just in other words, rather than go down the road telling the city that they got to go buy new modular units, to say, this is the problem, and we need some resources dedicated to coming up with an appropriate solution. That's what I would like to say. But I may be all alone, you know?
Well, so, I mean, that sounds interesting to me. My question is, this isn't, in my head, this isn't like, oh, we need money to get Durham Whittier to tell us how to turn O'Malley art rooms into a preschool, right? This seems to be, I would think to be more ability in-house to go, okay, how do we take, existing capacity in a relatively as is, manner and work with it, because we're not, St. Anne's is what St. Anne's is, the high school is what the high school is, O'Malley is what O'Malley is there at least exploration before we go pay somebody to figure out how to change those buildings and say, hey, we can make St. Anne's work for at least 2 years at a time, can make it work for, longer than that. Hey, we made 5th grade fit into O'Malley once, can we make 5th grade fit into, hey, the Fuller 5th class demonstrated that when we put all the 5th graders together, they have the, highest number of academic achievement, great MCAS scores, lowest number of absenteeism. Like the Fuller 50 years to really galvanize that class. Is there a potential to do a, O'Malley 5th? Or I'm saying I don't have the answer, but like, do we need to have Durham Whittier or someone like that tell us how to reinvent what we have? Or is it something we can do in-house where admin says, okay, here's what we got. We have X amount of classrooms, X amount of square feet, and, not X amount of classrooms, Y amount of square feet, and Z number of students. How do we minimize the amount of raw money we need to spend replacing modulars and maximize reusing and repurposing space that's being underutilized currently? Even when we're going through the veteran swing space, my recollection was the only reason it didn't get reviewed, the option of not renting St. Anne's and putting them keeping them in-house was simply because we weren't sure when COVID was going to be over, and there was a chance that we were still all going to be 6 feet apart. And so this again is a longer term thing. Hopefully, fingers crossed, by fall of 23, we have, a handle on whether we're still socially distancing or not, whether it's a new part of forever or whether that was a blip on the radar. And, and the talks we had about veterans going to O'Malley or the high school or both seemed to be like, oh yeah, that's something to look at except for COVID. Well, the COVID part of that except is gone now. So I just really to see us just kind of work on it, in-house before we spend more money.
Well, I disagree. I think you need to have somebody else. I can't imagine going down to the high school and asking James Cook to do anything at all, like, do a survey of rooms, of how much space there is there. I mean, you do need somebody to come in and pull it together, or it probably isn't going to happen.
So here's my fear about that. Maybe it's unfounded because maybe this is a unique situation, but I remember when West Parish swing space was being looked at, and one of the things they looked at was reusing Fuller. And the report we got back from Durham Whittier had things like, well, we're going to turn the gymnasium into the cafeteria, and we're going to turn the cafeteria into the library, we're going to turn these classrooms into an art room, we're going to turn this art room into a bathroom. And it was like, well,
Joel, I think you're misremembering.
You can go pull those plans. They were reusing major rooms for different things. I maybe exaggerated, like the cafeteria was going to the gym, right? Yep. And so I feel we would have done a disservice if they come back and say, oh, here's how we can change GHS to receive elementary school students. I'd rather say, here's what you have at GHS that can receive elementary school students, without too much. I guess what I'm trying to, if we were to do that, I want it to be more narrowed, like we're trying to save money here, not spend money. Again, that retrofit for Fuller was like twice the cost of the new West Parish when it was all said and done. And so of course it was like, a nonsense proposition. But I don't think we need that in this instance. I think it's more about working with what we have. And I'm nervous that if we ask them to do such an audit or a study, the result we'll get back will be, here's how you change everything to accomplish this goal, not here's how you accomplish this goal, given what you have to work with.
I think one of the values that somebody from outside does is match the educational needs of the age appropriateness of who needs it, not just looks at a dollar figure and a floor plan. I can't imagine parents would be really happy having their elementary kids share a bathroom with high school kids. 5th grade going with 6th grade is a very different thing. And there were 3 classrooms. It wasn't the entire district, and it was a short-term thing that parents were not happy about to begin with. They were not. So, and I also want to remind everybody, you know, when surveys of school choice kids and families, you know, number 1 or 2 was facilities, why people chose to not stay in our district. And I think we're making tremendous strides, and instead of being a detriment, people have hope that those are an asset, the progress we've made on our buildings. I just think that any simplistic view of number of classrooms available versus number of students is completely contrary to our goal of educating students in the best environment. I would want to hear from principals. I would want to hear, you know, if we had St. Anne's, we'd have yet another school who's going to administer the school. I think it's one thing to take a situation on a transition basis and make the best of it. It's another to house kids in St. Anne's, which does not have kind of a full gym or a, you know, it has a playground across the street. It doesn't have a dedicated playground for younger kids. I mean, I
was told all that's not a problem, Kathy. I've glowing
It's-
reviews of St. Anne's from you and others. I mean, is that a problem or is that not a problem for our students?
It's a temporary trade-off, I guess. Is it a problem? It's a trade-off, and families and the community, you know, it's the reality of making something better in the long term is taking trade-offs in the short term. And I think, you know, we had a lot of conversations at West Parish about the transition, and they were not always pleasant conversations there. They were not happy that kids would be split up. They were not happy 5th grade would not have their usual mentor role with younger kids. And, you know, kept getting reminded this is a temporary solution to a long-term benefit of having a brand new school. We had no other way to transition those kids. It was not done because we thought it was educationally advantageous. We just hoped that it would be educationally still neutral because they'd be in classrooms, and then the principal worked her butt off during those 2 years. I don't think we can discount that she was dealing with transportation at 2 locations. She would literally end school at one place and go to O'Malley to do dismissal at O'Malley. You know, I think a lot of people can do a sprint for a limited amount of time. To think of it as a long-term ideal scenario for a kid entering kindergarten or whatever is totally different scenario.
Right, and maybe it's a hybrid. Maybe there's not. But I feel like we're not being responsible unless we at least explore it. And I support a motion like Jonathan said about making a request to the city to have funds appropriated to do such a study. I'm happy to support that if that moves us in the right direction.
I would want to know also from Mike Hale about timing. Does this put us in danger? As you say, Joel, are we backed into a corner? I mean, I think he's been sounding the alarm for a while. And so to put this off for however long might totally derail for the following school year. So
Right. I mean, didn't we have a conversation with Dr. Sapphire a couple of years back? And he'd even said, you know, when new EG vets comes online, there'll, like John, that there'll be excess capacity between, you know, and West Parish, you know, was, you know, has a little bit of room if you increase, you know, not to a drastic extent, but if you increase the student population over there. I feel like I was visiting a BNF maybe, I don't think it was on BNF yet, but and I raised the question from the audience and he was like, you know, yeah, there'll be excess capacity when EG vets comes online. We may not need as many modulars. And even that would be a bonus, but to have this motion today that's like, let's replace all of them wholesale, you know, even if the answer is, oh yeah, we can do one less at Plum Cove, one less at Beam, well, that's still good, you know, that's still something, right? Get more kids into the newer schools and fewer kids into the temporary schools, right? I just think we should look at it more.
Okay, does anyone want to make a motion? Well, I'd like to hear from our superintendent actually on what we're talking about. Because
Sure.
I
Yep.
feel that we can't ignore the educational approach to what we're discussing on a financial matter.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy. So I appreciate the conversation, the discussion and the guidance. What we're talking about here, just to be clear, is looking at much more than just where do we place kids. Going down roads, and I think it's worth investigating some. But we have two, long-term communities that are up and running. We don't see, there's no path over the next 10 plus years to changing those communities necessarily. What we'd have to look at is, reordering the schools and school communities is, I think, what you're asking us to look at. I could be wrong about that, but that's what I think of, because when I hear, different grades in different rooms, different, splitting up schools into other buildings in different parts of the city, that's actually what we're actually getting into is serious disruption of existing school communities, and not necessarily for the short term, potentially for quite a long term, because if we need to rebuild or will rebuild Plum Cove and Beaman, that's not a short time away. So it's a pretty complex, and that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. We can do complex things, but the way I'm hearing it, it's a more complex analysis and look at, at a goal I'm not clear on yet. Is the goal saving dollars? Is the goal eliminating rooms? Is I'm not sure what the goal is yet. What we're trying to, what we're trying to achieve yet. It's not clear for me yet.
Go ahead.
Thanks. I mean, so again, my recollection of this meeting in which we were discussing this, maybe I was there as an alternate or whatever, there was, we talked about the fact that, I think he referred to it as like the third rail is redistricting, right? But he was like, he's, again, this is Dr. Sapphire talking to BNF a couple of years ago, we're in the concept stage and talking about this excess capacity to kind of fix the Plum Cove Beaman modular situation. He was like, EG Vets is a big enough event that can justify some, like changing of catchment areas and realignment of school populations. And it just seems, again, I haven't been here through the whole thing. I haven't been here for the last 13 years of it, but it just seems like not that it's ever easy, but I don't know. I'm really trying to be patronizing. I'm being genuine when I say this as an example, because I come from a world with like a lot of small kids, right? A small kid trips and falls and looks up, and if the parents are like, "Oh my gosh, are you okay?" he starts crying. And if the parents are like, "Oh my God, that was hilarious," he starts laughing, right? And to a degree, we have done way harder things and sold it as a positive to this community. You guys closed a huge school and sent 600 kids across the city, right? And you sold it. You had to close another school and send some to O'Malley, some to Vets, and people talk glowingly. People from West Parish came to sell St. Anne's to veterans because they had such a fond memory of it, right? And so I just think that this whole, because there's a lot of negativity that could come with these harder choices, I feel like this district has, glass half full, harder things before in a genuine way. And so I would hope that if there was, again, a difficult decision that had a truly positive outcome that at the outset may generate negativity, we wouldn't just say, no, we'll just replace the modulars. This is going to upset too many people, because we certainly haven't shied away from upsetting people before if it was the right thing to do monetarily or educationally or both, right? So just, redistricting to say, hey, Beaman, you're not getting as many modulars, but there's some of your population's coming to the new EG Vets. Like, are people upset by that? Or they go, oh my God, great, I get to go to the new school. Like, are people sad? I don't know, probably not.
Talking 40 kids out of a school of 350, right? You're not talking, you're talking how many kids to reduce a classroom, right? I mean, that doesn't even take an entire grade away from Beaman.
In and of itself, it does not, right? But if it's, again, a piece of the puzzle that gets put together to solve it, that could be the, oh, we have 40 kids left to figure out. Oh my God, if we change it like this, we've got it locked in. Now we can order half as many modulars or something. That's just.
I think, like I say, I'm just wary about just saying we got to replace all the modulars exactly the way they were, because I don't know. I'm not sure you were here when we had this discussions with MSBA, but there was a serious push from MSBA after we did our student enrollments, saying we should be building a 3-class per grade school because of the enrollment. And we were able to prevail and get them to commit to building a 4-class per grade school. But that was their take at that point. And I'm just saying that the population is such, should be looked at before we just replace whatever it is, 16, 15 modulars, that maybe we need to replace 10 and reduce it by 4 or something. We need to look at it. That's all I'm saying. We shouldn't be prescribing the solution. If the city comes back and says this is, and Mike Hale weighs in and he's got to take care of these things, and he is able to prevail with the city to do it, to replace them all, then so be it. But I'm just saying, I don't think that we should be saying this is what we've got to do.
So I understand the question about Mike Hale, and I'm also very clear where he stands on this. Okay, in terms of, and he's not making the educational decision, he's making the building decision. I mean, he's giving the advice, the council on those structures.
Right.
And he's been crystal clear, even before I got here, that those structures, are failing. So the structural question, I think, should not be in doubt about those.
No,
about those
I don't.
structures.
I don't question that at all.
Right.
We need to do something. We need to let the city know that something needs to be done in no uncertain terms.
So then we can take a closer look at, enrollment and educational value. Okay, it's going to be, and we'll learn what we learn. Okay, but from where I sit now, the level of moving around could very likely result in little gain for a whole lot of disruption. And so I just am very wary going into this, and I'm not predicting anything here, but that's where I'm thinking right now is, we move a lot of deck chairs around, and a lot of disruption, and disruption impacts learning. Okay. So anyway, so I think we can look more into it, but it's and there will be a looking at, regardless of what we do with any structures here, there has to be looking at enrollment zones, that sort of stuff, and where they are and how we're doing it. But I don't think, neither Beaman nor Beaman has increased in students from 2012. They're within 10 students of where they were in 2014, 2015. Plum Cove has been remarkably steady, over the last 10 years, 210 plus or minus 5, really. So, and I understand that's, to some degree importing kids. I get that fully. So anyway.
Jonathan, I'd like to see a motion that does a kind of a quick path and a parallel path on these things. In other words, if there's a way to have the facility aspect and the educational aspect go in parallel. I think in terms of cost of modulars, there's probably a back of the envelope number, I would think, given how frequently they're used by school districts. And I think there's the numbers that had to do with, bringing O'Malley up to up speed for housing kids. I mean, it's one thing to have an art class with a garage door that opens floor to ceiling. It's another to put third graders in a room without, that something that's not, doesn't resemble a real classroom.
Right.
So I think from a financial perspective, just knowing the preschool exercise, the number was cost prohibitive to think about repurposing space. But, it's worth looking at and pulling that information out and seeing by somebody who's objective to kind of look at it from a numbers perspective. And then I think the educational aspect, it's going to be really important to, see what any kind of separation of student body would have as an impact, given all the gains we've made about cohesiveness and across 5 schools and, the work of principals and the vertical integration, which I still think we have a long way to go in terms of vertical integration between 5th and 6th and 8th and 9th. I think kids do it pretty good, but I think we can do a better job in terms of having the learning continue in a more similar fashion, as well as, having 8th graders understand what high school is all about. And so if you're having 5th graders come from various places, I mean, I just think there's a lot of, as Ben said, moving deck chairs around, and I'm not sure educationally it's consistent with what we've been doing for the past 8 years. So I'd want to understand that, because I certainly do not want to take a step back educationally.
No, and I certainly don't either. I just don't think well, never mind. Let me make a motion and see if it will fly. So I'll make a motion that we recommend to the full committee that they request the city to provide, to develop a plan to provide housing and educationally acceptable housing for the students at Beaman and Plum Cove. And we could prelude that with just a statement saying that because the modular units at Beaman and Plum Cove are beyond repair, we need to look into this, and but I don't, or perhaps it could be in conjunction with the school department, come up with a plan to provide housing for the students, and that can be replacing the modulars. I mean, I just think that we need to at least look at possibilities of not replacing, 15 modulars. That's all.
I'm not sure if it's appropriate for me to chime in here or not.
Oh, well,
That motion?
someone's gonna second.
Well, I don't even know that's a cohesive motion.
Mhm.
Maria got
I got it.
it. Second.
Okay. Ben, you wanted to say something?
I would suggest that we work on this motion a little bit before we put it out there publicly, because it has the potential to disrupt things at a moment where I think we just want to take a breath. Okay. Because that can be interpreted in a lot of ways, which you and we don't intend, by two very, important school communities. And I don't think the timing on that, no, and so that's why I think the wording of this motion matters a ton. And I don't, so I would just, that's my, that's some food for thought perhaps for the community members to discuss. But, and I know you're just sort of trying to put something together there, Jonathan, but that I think would send very strong tremors to those two school communities at a time where I'm not sure we're ready to address them.
Maria, can you read? So
would-
maybe,
How about this? I would be happy to do what Ben says and to work on this motion. And if we could have a very brief BNF just before the school committee meeting to make it really clear and get it right. Because I think there's an urgency that we get this before the city, and it is our responsibility in the charter to ask the city for whatever we need to educate students, including buildings. So I would
want to
that
withdraw your
accept-
motion?
Hmm?
You want to withdraw the motion?
Sure, I'll withdraw the motion
My second.
if we can refine it and meet right prior to the next Wednesday's school committee meeting. Because it needs to go. We're not going to be meeting in July. It needs to be in front of the city.
Yeah, I think it's important that the language says, evaluate solutions, given the modulars are whatever, but open-ended. Okay. All right, we all comfortable with that? Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ben. Okay, budget transfers. We'll rapid fire, but
Yeah.
thoroughly
Yeah.
take these items up.
At Concom in 10 minutes.
Yeah, in the interest of time, why don't I ask if there's any questions instead of go through. Do you have any questions on any of these transfers? Or if not, we can do a motion.
I don't have any questions. I don't see any other questions.
Okay,
We have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we recommend to the full committee that they approve the transfers as presented.
Second.
Okay, discussion. Seeing none, roll call vote, Maria?
Joel,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes,
Kathy,
Yes. Okay, the summer cleaning, maintenance and repair work? Gary, you're gonna go through this?
this is Ben's.
I thought so. He's on mute.
Ben, you're on mute.
Got it. I got it. So I got this today from DPW. Cody, could you just enlarge a little bit or zoom in a little bit? Thank you. So this is the list of the work they'll be doing, repairs, maintenance at across the schools this summer. Okay. And this in addition to this is their typical thorough cleaning of all the classrooms, hallways, or every single space basically. So haven't had a close look at this yet, but it's some particular pieces. What you don't see here is you can scroll down some, Cody, and this, I'm sorry, this is also in your Drive folder as well. A variety of bits and pieces. Some of the bigger pieces that we mentioned before are the redoing the floors at Plum Cove, which are under warranty, which were not installed properly by a contractor. Let's pull these up. there are the bigger ticket items that I was hoping for but aren't in here are still under discussion through the possible use of free cash from the city, and those are lockers at the high school. Well, modulars is one piece of it. And the third one also is now probably on hold as well, which is painting at Beaman and Palm Cove, exterior painting. Again, that and also the modular discussion are about maintaining those buildings so they last for as long as we need them. So those aren't on here at this point, but in recent conversation with John Dunn, still in the it's still talking through them. Obviously, given tonight's discussion, the whole Beaman Plum Cove painting is a little up in the air, obviously. But that's I think you understand that. The things you don't see on here are work that we will be doing, which is the grease traps, some exciting work like the grease traps at O'Malley and GHS. But what I want to do here is just make sure the school committee is open, is understands and sees what will be done. And so you know that, and we can report back on what was completed at the end of the summer. Not much more than that.
And Ben, when do the security projects start at O'Malley? And
Yeah, so they are, we've been on calls with them. Sorry, I forgot about updating you on this. We've been on calls every single week. James, myself, Lynn, Grant. I think that's the only folks from our side. With the project team, they are literally, today's Wednesday. They shut off some of the IT stuff in the O'Malley offices today and moved them this afternoon to the temporary office at the O'Malley Library. They are cleaning out and moving over the next couple of days, and they will begin work early next week at O'Malley. High school has 1 more week, and so their move out of their current offices will happen a week from Friday. And then so that between now and their packing, Grant and his team will be moving IT and the phones and all those sorts of things to their temporary offices. And they'll then begin abatement and demolition a week from Monday. I'm sorry, I'm just getting my dates mixed up. That would be the 28th of June. Very fast time frame. And by this point, just ready to go and on schedule still. And sorry, to be completed August 18th and ready for movement at that point.
And what contractor's doing the work?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I was just curious.
Okay, all right. I'll give as part of BNS report on Wednesday, I'll give a few more details on that.
And I also think communication should probably go out to the school community that these projects are happening. If there's any logistical information that might be helpful, because I know O'Malley's doing isn't O'Malley doing O'Malley Academy this summer?
Yeah, they both have significant summer programs going on, so I know they will be communicating, to their either. I'm not sure if it's to just the families and students who are participating or more broadly than that, but I'll find out. But I know if they haven't yet, I'm sure, but they will be communicating about those adjustments, about where to enter and sort of thing.
Great. Okay. Revolving funds.
Okay, I'll talk about this real fast. Food service has $91,000, which is in a good position. Obviously, that's after all the general fund had paid salaries.
And we need that. And we need that balance to make those purchases in the summer to start the school year, right?
Correct. So the 91,000 will carry us forward. So the moving on, athletics is all the other revolving funds are in good shape. Athletics 34,000, transportation 25,000, and these totals exceed the beginning balances at the start of the fiscal year. So preschool, same thing, its ending balance is higher than its beginning balance. Circuit breaker, one more payment of 296,000. So that'll be up to about $1.1 million. And they'll be in good shape to start, and we'll spend those dollars next year. So non-resident tuition, we have a couple students coming in from Rockport. And so we have a real nice balance of $100,000, exceeded our balance, beginning balance as well. And then the rest of these revolving funds are all relatively small. Student activities, 65,000. We still need, Cody and I need to work through that and divvy up those amounts and spread it to the, different levels, whether it be elementary, middle, or high school. So we have further work to do on that. But all in all, I think I'm pleased with the relative position of all the revolving funds. So entertain any questions that you may have. Kathy, you're muted.
I see no questions.
Okay. All right, so that is all we have today. And thank you very much for your support. And we'll be ready to discuss the motion next Wednesday before the school committee.
Right.
Gary and Cody, thank you for all the attention to detail this year. There's a lot of spending out of the ordinary and there's a lot of tracking. So I feel like we've been kept very informed and having everything kind of in control as to what's being spent, how's it being covered and all that stuff. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody want to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay. Maria, roll call vote.
Joel,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
and Kathy.
Yes. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, Maria.
You're welcome.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.